Hi guys, it's Dylan from Bijou Diamond Jewellery in London again with another watch review, and today we're looking at the Rolex Daytona in steel. If you want to learn about the history of the Daytona and the previous models of the Daytona, then head over to our 116503 review or bimetal Daytona review for a little bit about the history and how the Daytona came about. Let's look more specifically at the history for the steel Daytona. When it was first released, people didn't really like it that much. People thought it was kind of cheap, just a little cheap sports watch. But now people respect it, and it's one of the most desirable sports watches in the world. If we look at some of the most expensive watches ever sold that were Rolexes, in auctions, we can see most of them are Paul Newman Daytonas or steel Daytonas. So they've always had this kind of stigma of being very valuable, and people really like them. And Rolex doesn't release too many of them, and they're quite clever with holding them back, so that makes them even more desirable. For me, the steel Daytona has always been seen as a great status symbol for success. You look at a lot of big business people, successful people in the world, not all of them, but lots of them have steel Daytonas. They're not loud or obvious like gold is. Steel's very understated. People with high levels of success that want to treat themselves to something, that maybe don't want to show it off too much, and the steel Daytona really does well for that, and it's also a great investment as well. If we look at the predecessor to this watch, which was the 116520, which was released back in 2000, skip 16 years on and we come to 2016 where the 116500, which is what we're looking at today, was released. We can see very few changes over that 16 years. Nothing's changed on the bracelet. Nothing significant has changed on the case, the actual metal case. The only thing that's changed in the metal case is the crown guards have become slightly smaller. Apart from that, nothing else has changed. The movement inside the watch is exactly the same as the 116520. So some people are a bit annoyed that they hadn't changed the movement. I think it's a bit lazy from Rolex, but I think if it isn't broken, why fix it? It did what it needed to do. It's got a good power reserve. I don't think it needs changing. I think it does what it needs to do. So the biggest change that people will notice is the black ceramic bezel. Other changes are the dials are slightly different. The sub-dials are slightly more satin finish, not quite as shiny and bright looking as on the old 116520. I personally prefer this new dial. I think it has more of a subtle appearance, not quite as shiny, and kind of goes with the whole watch a little better. The only real change on this black dial version are those sub-dials. On the white dial there's a couple more changes, so a bit more of a change versus the 116520 from before. So let's move back onto the bezel, which is probably one of the biggest features. I really like this new bezel, and I think it's a great change. We saw the same bezel on the Platinum Daytona back in 2013 when that was released. Ceramic bezel also features on a couple of the leather Daytona options, the leather strap versions. And I think it's a great addition to the steel version because even the steel is harder than the other precious metals and is therefore less susceptible to scratching and dents. A lot of our clients that came back with the steel Daytonas for servicing and polishing, we found a lot of the time they were dented and the numbers had worn away as well on the tachymeter. So I think the ceramic's going to be great for that because firstly, it won't wear away, it's scratch resistant, so it should look really good in many years to come. It also won't get dinks and dents like the old steel one did, so I think overall it's going to make the watch look much younger than it actually is in a few years' time. It also looks really great with this black dial, kind of ties it all into one. Gives it much more of like a sporty appearance, and I think it does it for the white dial as well. I think overall this watch does look much more sporty. A lot of people really like this new bezel because it's kind of reminiscent of the old original Daytonas, the Paul Newman Daytonas around that time, because they all featured a black bezel, or most of them featured a black bezel. They also had panda looking dials, or the Paul Newman dials, and these new dials are very reminiscent of that as well. So overall people really like this new version because it kind of harks back to those original Daytona memories and styles. I really like it too. I think it's like a modern classic. I think it's a watch that won't go out of fashion. I think it's a very cool looking piece. So overall, which do I prefer, the new one or the old one? So personally, I prefer the new one, and this is why. I think the bezel is a great addition. I think it's going to transform the way these watches look in future. I think some of the old ones, the 116520s, look very dated and old now because that bezel was worn away. And I think this should solve that problem. I think it looks much sportier, much more modern and utility, this one. I think the old steel one looks much more dressy and elegant, I think, because the steel kind of matches that whole rest of the look of the piece, the steel bezel. Especially if you pair it with the white dial, they all merge into one really nice, elegant looking piece. Whereas this black kind of pops the watch out a bit more, makes the dial and the bezel much more prominent in the design, making it much more of a sporty appearance. So in that respect, maybe I prefer the old one for more of a dressy look, but for this one, for every day, I think it looks great. And I think if you put this on a rubber strap, a black rubber strap or a pearl-on strap with the black dial and the black bezel, I think that would look amazing. Really cool everyday sports watch. And I definitely think these are great for dressing up as well. They're not too deep, so yeah, you can fit underneath a dress cuff. The Daytona is one of my favorite watches ever. I think it's such a great sports watch, and I think it's such a great everyday piece as well. It just fits with everything, and it fits my wrist really well as well. The size is quite small compared to a lot of other watches, and it's not too deep as well, so for me it's a perfect size. Of the dials, which do I prefer of the new ones and the old ones? I'd probably say I prefer the new ones, because I think those sub-dials, this new satin, less shiny appearance looks much better on the watch, suits the watch better. Would I own it? 100%. I think the steel Daytona is one of the coolest watches ever. A real status symbol, but a subtle one. And it's been desirable for a very long time. Some of them are even selling for double list price. They're very hard to get hold of. Rolex has kept them back, and that makes them super desirable. So people are willing to pay crazy prices for them. The great thing also about these steel Daytonas is they just keep going up in value. Every single year, they just keep creeping up, keep creeping up. Whenever I have a client that asks me what's a good investment watch, I always say the steel Daytona. If you can get a steel Daytona at a good deal, you're laughing, because it's definitely going to go up in value. It's a great everyday watch, and you can enjoy it for years and years and years, and you get more money at the end of it. So for me, the steel Daytona is one of the best investment watches to buy. Thanks guys for watching. Stay tuned for more watch reviews. Let us know in the comments down below what else you'd like to see. Be sure to check out the watch room for up-to-date prices. Link is in the description. And also check out our engagement rings, wedding bands and tennis bracelets online.